Good morning, executives. My name is Nicholas G. I'm going to be presenting the artificial blood vessels presentation for you today, which is going to cover the basics of the analysis of three different materials that have come across my desk in order to create an artificial blood vessel to be used as a prosthesis in the human body. Today, we will be looking at our first one, which is going to be my three materials. So we're going to start with the EPFTE, which is pretty much just a synthetic peptide bond that has been grafted to the body in order to get almost a natural feel. A material called Dacron, which is a very hard cased material that allows for no leakages and can withstand the pressure that goes through the body. All of these can withstand the pressure that goes through the body when it comes beating out of the heart from blood. And the last one is called a type 1 collagen biopolymer. So the general idea started off with finding out our standard blood pressure, which is 2.32 over 1.55 psi. The materials involved can all handle this no problem. The only times they ruptured are as if 5 times the blood pressure was pushed through. The only one that was able to stand this was the Dacron material. And again, the materials needed to handle this stress as well as the increased stress due to exercise, which wasn't as hard as it could have been. That's why the 5 times was used to see if anything would break. It's more of a 2 to 3 times the increase. Nothing really. The analysis did not break. It just showed high stress on the interior of the materials for the prosthetic. So the materials were needed to be cost friendly, have a decent longevity, and the analysis has them at 1 millimeter, 10 millimeter, and 100 millimeters in length, covering the pressure as well as the velocity that goes through them. So the first one is the Dacron material, which was previously mentioned. It's a highly resistant material to pressure, stress, but it ended up being more of a coating rather than a complete structure because Dacron, if it has a slight kink in it, the pressure builds up to a huge point to where it can rupture. And it was also the body would attack it as a foreign substance. So it ended up being a coating where the interior was a fiber. It was more of a fiber, like a protein fiber that was coated with the Dacron material. So here is the Dacron material at 1 millimeter. There are two pictures here, with the first one being right here. This is our pressure and our velocity right here. My bad, backwards. So here's the pressure, here's the velocity. So the velocity shows that the red, meaning it's tapped out on the velocity, meaning it can't go any faster than that. And the arrows here are the smaller indications of the rest of the velocity, which show that if there's nothing wrong with it, it's perfectly fine. And on the other side here, on our pressure, the pressure has maintained is fairly constant because the material for Dacron is very, very hard. Or not hard, but it is able to withstand pressure, and with that coating, it's able to contain the stretching of the inner fibrous material. So here we have our next one, Dacron at 10 millimeters, which you can see what's going on here is we have our plots here show the flow rate at which it goes and the pressure that goes inside. So here is our pressure right here, and here is our velocity. So the velocity, as you can see, it starts off like pretty standard because it's coming straight from the heart. That's the assumptions, it's coming straight from the heart. And then as it goes, this right here will slightly decrease because it is getting further away from the heart. This stays constant the entire time. So we have at 2.285 meters per second, and our pressure is measured in pascals in this case, with the highest being 101,326.86 pascals. So at 100 millimeters, it's a little bit harder to see due to the fact that it had to be zoomed out so much, but we do have the same thing here, 2.285 meters per second, which shows up on this end. It's really hard to see, but it's right about in the middle from the original design. And the pressure is again stays constant throughout the entire thing. These arrows will end up going all the way through if the original simulation was run completely. So the next material is called EPTFE. It's a softer, more malleable material that is definitely not as strong as our Dacron material, but is a very viable substitute under the basic demands that were given to us under the pressure and the velocity constrictions. So the only downside to this one is it did need a peptide bond to be prevented from being broken up in the body, again a foreign substance, and it is very similar to our type 1 collagen biopolymer, which we will be talking about later on. So here we have our EPFTE at 1 millimeter. There's a lot going on in here. It just shows the pressure and everything in the middle is very high at 1 millimeter, which was the original worry for this, is that it wouldn't be able to contain it, but it does contain it very well. The velocity is very fast going through at 8.521 meters per second, and the pressure, it does have a standard around 125,715.23 pascals. Both the values can be interswapped, so the orange here can also show for the maximum velocity at that point here, as well as the pressure going through at the same time based on how it was designed. So next we have it at 10 millimeters, which shows the flow rate, which are our velocity, which are the arrows right here. So as you can see, it gets lower and lower as it goes through the end, which is perfectly normal because the further away from the heart, the more or the less velocity can go through, because it does have to go back into the body, which is shown by our turbulence later. Or actually, it can be seen right here as it comes back. You can start to see it bend down, come down here. And then the pressure, it does stay constant. This right here will stay constant throughout the entire movement of the 10 millimeter process. And lastly, we have it at 100 millimeters. Again, we see the heart starting right about here, and then it comes all the way through here. And if the simulation was run completely through, we would see these arrows continue to pass through the pressure, and this pressure stays constant all the way through the 100 millimeter length. And right here you can see it where it's coming back in and out from the end of the artery. And finally, our last material is the type 1 collagen biopolymer, which I will be referring to as a biopolymer from here on out. It is very similar to the EPTFE, except it can be used within the body almost indefinitely. It has a high success rate at around 91% for the initial integration, and after 6 months it falls to 85% because the body does need to adjust to the new pressure that has to go through it. The reason why this is so high is because it uses the DNA of the user that's going to be getting the prosthetic to prevent the rejection during the formation of the artery. Another good thing about the collagen biopolymer is that it is high pressure control at small lengths. So at the 1 millimeter length, which we'll be seeing later, it holds very well as compared to its EPTFE counterpart. And this is the best choice for our prosthetic because it does have the short distance as well as the long distance parameters that fill out very nicely. So here at our 1 millimeter, we can see that our velocity is pretty standard. You can see a little bit of the turbulence here coming back. And then we have right here, the pressure stays constant throughout the entirety of that 1 millimeter distance, and it doesn't even get to the maximum point for pressure at 101,322.85 pascals, my bad. It stays more around the 9,857 mark. So here at the 10 millimeter, you can see there's a little bit more pressure involved in here, but you still see some of that turbulence coming through, which is normal. The reason why is because you are going from 10 millimeters here, so the more pressure is needed to travel through it. And again, you do hit more at the 101,711.79 up here for the pressure, and then our velocity does not ever hit the maximum velocity, but we come close at about 2.5 meters per second. Lastly, we do have the 100 millimeter length, which again you can see here, it starts to slow down right about towards the middle, but the pressure will carry this all the way through. That's what this is right here. The pressure does max out, but that is because it has to go the entire length through our 100 millimeters of our new artery. Right here you can see some of that turbulence coming back, which is when it comes back through the veins and get back to our heart, which is over at this area right here. So to sum it all up, our best overall is going to be our biopolymer decision, because overall price is $1.27 an ounce just to get the biopolymer collagen extract, which you can buy in bulk from not necessarily the pharmacy, but you can have them ship it there. The most expensive part will be the extraction of your DNA in order for them to combine it with the collagen replacement so that your body does not attack it. And this also allows you to withstand the exercise blood pressure increase. But doing the exercise, if you're a heavy exerciser, does cut down the lifespan of the material by slightly over half of its lifespan, and the standard lifespan is about 30 years. But the lifespan, if you're a heavy exerciser for a younger person like myself at the age of 22 years old, it cuts it down to about 12 years before you would need to get it replaced or you would have to have it looked at. Uh, that pretty much sums up the presentation. The reason why we chose the biopolymer collagen was because it was the best of both worlds. It was strong and it was very malleable to the point where we uh, didn't need to break it based off of the Dacron material, because the Dacron material is hard, but it was only able to be used as a coating. But this, it hits every spot that we want and allows for the blood to flow freely and increased pressure. There's no ruptures, no nothing going through. The only time it ruptured was at 5 times the pressure of blood, which I believe is 8.33 times 10 to the negative 5 meters per second. And over that small width and the length, that is actually a lot considering it's within the human body. But I thank you for listening to me and hearing out my presentation. I hope you agree with me about the biopolymer decision for our collagen, not injections, but our collagen DNA sample in order to be used in future for our arterial prosthesis. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Nicholas G, and I'm looking forward to hearing your answers.